Welcome to a video looking at the idea of selling a note. These are not love notes. A note is a very short-term loan. Many times it's days, it's less than a year. And so let's take a look at a word problem with this scenario. There we go. So for services rendered, an attorney accepts a 90-day note for $5,500 at 8% simple interest from a client. So there we have it, the note, the very short-term loan. So in this case, it's a 90-day loan for $5,500, 8% interest. What's going to happen is at the end of the 90 days, both the interest and the principal need to be paid. Now, that's the original note, but we're going to sell it. So we have here that the attorney wishes to have his money sooner, so 30 days into this loan he needs the money, and so he sells the loan, the note, to a third party. And our question here is, what annual interest rate will the third party receive? So what we really want to know is, from the third party perspective, is this a good investment? Are they receiving a very minimal interest rate, or are they receiving a fairly good return on their investment? So let's look at all of the players involved. Wiped our slate clean. There is our word problem at the top. Here's our attorney and his client. The client is the young lady, and we're going to just go through and look at what we know about each of them. So we know that the client owes $5,500 but can't pay right at the moment. We know that she is willing to accept a loan for 90 days to put this off approximately 3 months, but she's going to need to pay 8% interest for that privilege of putting off the payments. And so at the end of the 90 days, she's going to need to repay the $5,500 that she owes, and then the interest, or a total of $5,610. So what do we know about the attorney? First off, he thinks he can wait 90 days to get paid. That's why he accepts the note in the first place. Secondly, after 30 days, he's broke. He really needs that money. He has bills that are due, whatever's happening in his life. And so he is going to look to see if someone else will pay him the money and hold the note to get paid from the client, the young lady in this case. And so enter our third party. In this case, it's a banker. And I kind of think it looks like Daddy. Don't you say? Bald head. I think there's some resemblance. So, third party, in our case, the banker. We know that the attorney sells the note to the banker for $5,560. So we see that the attorney made $60 of interest compared to the original amount. We also see that the total that the girl is going to have to pay is more than what the attorney sells this note for. So we see that we have some information about the banker as well. We know that he buys the note for the $5,560, but we know that he is going to get paid $5,610 from the girl. And we also know that he's going to hold that loan, or he's going to have to wait 60 days to get paid, because the total note was 90 days, 30 to the attorney, 60 to the banker. And finally, he's going to make 50 bucks. Now, 50 bucks doesn't seem like a lot of money, but really, he's not doing anything except holding the note. What we're asking the question, though, is to figure out the interest rate. So is he making 2% on this money? Is he making 10% on the money? The percent is what really tells us whether or not it's a good investment compared to what else is on the market. Alright, so we'll wipe our slate clean again and start looking at the math. The first thing that we need to figure out is how much the girl is going to pay. Now, I realize it was on the previous slide, but I did some work to get that number. So how much is the note worth? Well, we have a formula for simple interest, and we just need to substitute numbers into this formula to figure it out. So my principal, the amount of the loan, is $5,500, so I put that in for P. The rate is 8%, so I convert that to a decimal and substitute that in. Now, the time is always given in years. So I have 90 days, But a year, you're thinking, is 365 days. No, I didn't mess that up. The 360 is often used, it's called a banker's year. And it makes the calculations just a little bit cleaner. The decimals aren't as long. And so for the really short loans, like the note, the 360 is the standard number used when the loan is taken out for just several days rather than an entire year. And so I did the math there, 90 divided by 360, and that comes out as a nice decimal as promised. And then I put that all in my calculator, and that's how I came up with the value of the loan at $5,610. So now we need to be concerned about what's happening for our third party, our banker. So for the third party, we're going to use the exact same formula. And here's where I'm actually going to write out the math so that we can see what's happening. So let me get my pen here. There we go, and hopefully this works. So we know the final amount of this loan, and that's what we actually figured out here in step 1. So for A in the formula, I'm putting 5,610. For the principal, well, this gentleman bought the loan for the $5,560. So the principal here is not what the girl is taking out the loan for, but what the third party bought the loan for. So I put that in for both cases where I have my p-value. The interest rate. Well, the interest rate's what we're asked for. When we look at the question, what is the annual interest rate? The interest rate is no longer the 8%. That would be what the girl's paying, but this is what we're trying to figure out, so we'll use our variable. And then the time, we're still dealing with days, so the third party is going to hold this loan for 60 days, and we're going to use the banker's year of just 360 days for this loan. So now we're ready to do some algebra. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract this amount from both sides. So minus 5,560 on this side as well. And that gives me $50. And we had talked about that 50 on the previous pictures, that the banker is going to make $50. And that $50 is what he makes based on the interest rate. So we have this amount over here yet that we did not cancel out in our equation. I feel like my pen's really slow. Sorry about that. Took me a while to write. So now I want to divide on both sides because my goal is to isolate this r, to isolate the rate. So I'm going to divide by the 5,560 on both the left and the right. And I'm going to get just a really big long decimal, so these cancel. Over here I have 0.00899, and it continues, so put a dot 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 there. I'm going to let that whole decimal on my calculator so that I don't round it all at this point in the problem. And so what remains over here is the rate times this fraction, 60 over 360. Now on the previous slide where we had 90, or previous side here, we had 90 over 360, that simplified to a very nice decimal. This, however, when I put that in, that's a repeating decimal, so I'm going to work with that as a fraction. I know that the opposite of a fraction is the reciprocal, so I'm going to multiply here by the reciprocal. So 360 divided by 60, and if I do that on this side, I have to do that on this side too, so times 360 divided by 60. So on this side, the 360s cancel, the 60s cancel, and so I have my rate equals, I already have this big number on my calculator, so I multiply by 60, and then I divide by, multiply by 360, divide by 60. So I put all that on my calculator, and I get 0.053956. And it continues. So I'm not even writing the whole thing. So again, a dot, dot, dot. Now, our textbook tells us that we're to round our interest rates to 3 decimal places. So I know that I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to give this as a percent. And then I want to keep 1, 2, 3 digits. So my rate equals, get a nice equals there maybe, 5.396%. And so we've answered our question. What is the rate? Well, the rate's 5.39%. You know, that's fairly good for a very low risk investment. It's not on the stock market where they could lose the whole thing, especially if the young lady has a good credit history. It's a decent return on investment, and that's what we really wanted to figure out. How good of an investment was this short-term loan called a note?